Dawn spilled across Castle Black like a pale ghost, its thin light glinting on frost-rimmed ramparts and the ragged black cloaks of the watch. Jon Snow stood upon the wall, boots braced against ancient ice, looking out over a world that had never before felt so small. Wind worried at the wolf furs on his shoulders, tugging strands of dark hair free of their leather tie. Below, the courtyard already stirred. Restless horses snorted clouds of steam. Iron rang on iron as men drilled, and ravens cried from their lofts like doom forbidding. Once, the sounds had been the whole of his life. Now they seemed merely echoes of something that belonged to someone else. Footsteps crunched behind him. Slow and measured. Jon did not turn. He knew the cadence. A soldier's march honed on stone decks and sea buffets, carried across half the world by unyielding purpose. When Lord Stannis Baratheon reached his side, he spoke without preamble, as was his custom. "The night is spent. You have given your brothers your answer." Jon breathed, tasting cold so sharp it burned his lungs. "I have." The words felt heavier than chainmail. "I told them the realm has need of a Stark again, and Winterfell must rise. And they cursed you." Stannis' mouth twitched. The Baratheon scowl fitted to a face lean from siege hunger and sleepless planning. "Some?" Jon remembered Pipe's wounded stare, Gren's disbelief, Ed's resigned humor. The way the Lord Commander's chambers had suddenly shrunk about them. Others understood. They fought for the realm. This is another kind of war. Wars are won by steel and fire, not sentiment. Stannis wrapped a gloved hand around Jon's shoulder, a grip as unyielding as frozen oak. Yet sentiment rules the North more deeply than any law. They will follow a Stark, or they will break. See that they follow. A raven spiraled above them, oily wings slashing the dawn. Jon watched its shadow skate over the white expanse, and wondered if Ghost felt the ripping inside him, the tearing between oaths sworn in boyhood and a duty carved into him by blood. Ghost was not here to answer. The direwolf had gone ranging hours past dusk, and Jon felt his absence like an unstaunched wound. Stannis released him. "We ride within the hour. Sir Axel will command the garrison. Melisandre prays for fair skies." "Ben?" Jon almost laughed. "A red priestess can melt snow? She can burn it." Stannis' eyes flickered, a colder fire than any born of sorcery. "Dress warm. Winter is only beginning." "And thou?" They rode south along the King's Road, a column of black and gold, and tarnished silver, banners snapping like caged spirits in the gale. Jon wore a thick surcoat quartered with the direwolf and the crowned stag. Half of it still stiff, new-stitched in the torchlight by a steward of the watch who wept silent tears with every needle pass. The other half felt ancient already, as though threads had sprouted from the bones of winter kings gone 300 years. When Night's Watch brothers came to bid him farewell, he spoke their names softly, promising to remember. He wondered if memory would be enough, or if the wall itself would rise between who he had been and who he must become. Davos Seaworth rode at his side, hood up against wind needles. "Hard road, Lord. Long way to carry the weight of 2 kingdoms. Only one," Jon said. "The North." Davos shook a grizzled head. "And the wall? And the free folk Stannis means to set in Carhold? Every step south you'll feel them tugging behind like iron-shod ghosts. Take smaller burdens, or grow a stronger back." "And now?" Jon managed half a smile. "You think I can lay some burden on another?" "A smuggler knows how to balance a deck," Davos replied. "Trim sail, tie down loose cargo, keep your feet in a storm. Stark or Snow, you'll need the trick of it." "Memdentadi." They talked of smaller things then. The taste of Sisterton ale, the shape of Mandan Moore's arrogance back when he still raided Lyseni galleys, the laughing storms off Shipbreaker Bay. But every word rang like a dirge for the boy commander left behind. "Enderell." Winterfell came into view on the 12th day, turrets rising through a veil of flurries like a half-remembered dream. Snow lay deep against the outer walls, carving new silhouettes where the gray stone still carried scars of iron and flame from Bolton's sabotage. At the great gate, the carved direwolves stared blind through ice lids, their jaws filled with wind-borne grit. Jon reined in, breath fogging, and felt the earth hum under his horse's hooves. A subtle, hollow resonance, as though the old gods were knocking on heartwood doors somewhere far below. He dismounted and stepped forward alone. The wind dropped. Silence pooled in the bailey beyond, broken only by the crackle of torches. For a heartbeat he was 5 again, chasing Rob through corridors smelling of oak smoke and boiling stew, his hair damp from the hot pools. Old Nan cackling in some distant cell as she spun demons into story. Then boots crunched behind him, and the memory fled. Stannis halted at his shoulder. "Claim your seat," the king rasped. "Stand idle, and others will." The portcullis lifted with a groan, chains rattling like teeth. Jon passed beneath, each step echoing against walls thick with history. He walked the familiar courtyard. Though the broken well had been filled, and a new smithy roof hung crooked from hasty beams, to the wide doors of the great hall. They stood open. Inside, braziers hissed, their orange tongues licking at cold gloom. Rows of northern banners waited in bundles on tables, each tied with twine, their house sigils hidden yet bee-bright in memory. The Boltons had flown flayed men here. Before them, iron-born krakens. Now the wolf would fly again, or nothing made sense of the blood spilled on this stone. Melisandre appeared from shadow, her red silks whispering, "The flames have spoken." She said, voice steel soft, "Winterfell's heart beats yet. You must feed it truth, or it will devour hope." Jon met her crimson gaze. "Truth is a harder hunt than deer in deep snows. Yet a hunter you must be. I have seen a direwolf made of starlight, pacing the battlements, jaws dripping night fire. I have seen the snow itself rise to defend him." "Visions," Jon muttered. "Ashes and future both." She breathed. "Do not scorn what the Lord of Light shows." Footsteps announced Maester Tybalt, gray of beard and stooped, dispatched weeks ago from White Harbor to tend the garrison Stannis had sent ahead. He bowed, chain tinkling. "My Lord Stark." "Forgive me, Lord Snow. The keep is provisioned for 90 riders, 20 archers, 60 men-at-arms, and 300 wildlings encamped in the quarry. Stores are lean. We will make them fatter," Jon answered, though he felt thinner by the moment. "Has word gone to the Manderless?" A rider left Dawn 4 days past. No reply yet. "Now." Stannis' mouth folded like parchment. "They will come. They hide behind fat walls, but their pride is hungrier than any belly." "And the Karstarks?" Davos asked. Tybalt hesitated. "Lord Arnulf swears fealty to your grace, though some among the clan whisper his oath is as hollow as a rotten pine." Stannis brushed snow from his brow. "Oaths do not rot. Men do. We will see which he is." His gaze cut to Jon, demanding, "Your bannermen await." Jon's throat tasted of iron. He climbed the dais. The steps chipped. The high seat draped in a wolfskin still faintly blood-stained, though someone had tried to scrub it clean with sand and lye. And turned to face the hall. Fire crackled. Wind slithered under doors. Every eye found him, torchlight swimming in pupils like red moons. Some faces he knew. Sir Albar Royce of the Gates of the Moon, come with 6 knights to honor the late Lord Commander Mormont. Lady Alice Karstark, clutching a fur mantle too large for her narrow shoulders. Stannis Southron captains, their mailed fists resting on sword belts. Others were strangers, not bearded mountain men with baleful stares, raven-tressed spearwives whose hands twitched at unseen threats. Jon drew breath. "I am Jon Snow, son of Eddard Stark, once sworn brother of the Night's Watch. By King Stannis' decree and the will of the North's good lords, I claim my father's seat as Lord of Winterfell. If any man holds better right, let him speak." Silence. The torches guttered, their flames bowing like courtiers. Snow flurried through high slits, ghosting across flagstones. A voice rasped, "Where's your crown, boy?" An older man rose, greasy beard shot with gray, eyes bright as flint. "We bent knee to a Stark king in the north once. You wear no crown, Tartaniu." Jon answered steadily. "The North remembers crowns are forged in fire and kept with honor." If crown you need, carve it from the ice on the wall. Its sharpness will remind you of duty." Laughter barked from a few throats. The old man scowled but sat. Davos murmured approval. Jon spoke on, naming resolve to restore grain levies, to rebuild holdfasts burned by Ironborn, to seek turns with manse raiders scattered folk so northern fields might be tilled come thaw. He promised justice for Bolton crimes, though the Dreadfort had yet to answer Stannis' summons. With each vow he felt Winterfell's stones vibrate, as if listening. When he finished, applause rose ragged but real. Jon swallowed. The hall blurred. He blinked until faces sharpened again. Somehow, he remained standing. That night, wind howled like wolves above the godswood. Jon knelt before the heart tree, red leaves wet with thin sleet. He laid Longclaw across his knees, Valyrian steel glimmering like oil in moonlight, and whispered names. "Ned, Robb, Bran, Rickon?" He asked the old gods to guide Ghost home, wherever he ranged. He asked forgiveness from the Watch, whose vows he had broken. He asked finally, a question with no shape, "What am I now?" The heart tree did not answer, but snow drifted down and melted on his cheeks, and that felt like something close to absolution. And then, days blurred into routines. Dawn councils in the solar, hammering of new horseshoes in the yard, letters drafted to every holdfast from Widow's Watch to Bear Island. Jon walked the battlements at dusk, marking weak stones, planning repairs to the collapsed bridge over the moat. He listened as young archers from Deepwood Motte argued with spearwives over who could bring down a deer at farthest range. He sent them to the range together and let targets decide. He tasted bread baked from rye grown at Barrowton before the long fall frosts, and thought it sweeter than any honeycake from King's Landing. Yet cracks spidered beneath the surface. Lord Arnulf Karstark arrived with 2 grandsons and 30 spears, swearing loyalty thrice over. Yet the glint in his eye was that of a gambler watching dice tumble. Roose Bolton's bastard Ramsay sent a letter nailed to a flayed man's shoulder, promising retribution and skinning. Jon burned it before reading half aloud. Melisandre's red priests lighted night bonfires in the yard, singing praises to Raelor. The wildlings drifted near the warmth, but some Northmen spat and muttered darkly about burning gods and witch queens. Even within the keep old ghosts stirred. A kitchen boy swore he saw a direwolf made of snow pacing the crypts. The blacksmith's daughter claimed a woman in gray moved through corridors after dark, weeping for lost children. On the 7th night, Mance Rayder himself was brought to Winterfell. Hooded, wrists chained raw-wood. Stannis' men had found his warband lurking near Queen's Crown, ragged and frostbitten. In the great hall, Mance stood before Jon, shoulders straight despite shivering. "King beyond the wall no more," he said, gesturing to the empty space where his crown of antlers once sat. But still Mance. "What now, Lord of Winterfell?" Jon searched the man's weather-creased face, the mixture of pride and exhaustion, defiance and resignation. "Now you eat, warm yourself, and decide whether your people will plant crops under northern banners or starve in hills, chased by wolves." Mance's smile cut like a broken knife. "You sound like a Stark." "I'm a Stark," Jon answered, and felt something settle within him. A stone matched to its niche. Underwandau. Snow deepened, turning roads to white labyrinths. Scouts returned with tales of Bolton outriders taking green boys for sport, flaying them and leaving their hides nailed to birches. At council, Stannis pressed for immediate assault on the Dreadfort, but Jon urged caution. The North would not rally behind southern siege engines. They would rally behind justice delivered by a Stark. Stannis yielded, though his eyes smoldered behind lantern shadows. Letters went by Raven. To Lady Lyanna Mormont on Bear Island, to Lady Dustin in Barrowton, to the Umbers at Last Hearth. Jon wrote each in his own hand, sealing with dark red wax, stamped by the old wolf seal that Hot Pie had found rusting in the crypt vault. He wrote of duty, of memory, of the long night foretold by old tales. He wrote of home. Responses trickled like meltwater beneath pack ice. Lady Lyanna swore 20 fighting men and her personal whispering of the Mormont axe. Lord Wyman manderly sent barrels of salted beef and hardtack, though no men yet, but with them a copy of a song penned by his court mummer, speaking of a white wolf rising. The Umbers sent back silence. The Dustons sent back a scornful note reminding him that wolves once tore hounds, but now were flea-ridden strays. Still, in the yard more torches burned nightly, and the ring of hammer on anvil carried into the cold vault of stars. Ghost returned at last, muzzle reddened from some hunt, eyes bright as winter moons. He padded beside Jon through echoing corridors, silent but for claw clicks. Jon's heart eased. When he fed the dire wolf in the kennels, children of the garrison came to watch with round eyes. One brave girl reached to stroke Ghost's ear. The dire wolf allowed it, though his white fur bristled. Laughter echoed, the first true laughter the yard had heard since before summer. And early one morning, Snow still whispering against shutter slats, Jon was roused by pounding at his chamber door. Maester Tybalt entered, cheeks flushed. "A rider from the wall, my lord." Jon's blood chilled. "White Walkers?" "No." The Maester swallowed. "Your brothers have elected a new Lord Commander." Sir Denys Mallister won by compromise on the 6th ballot. He sends respect. And a warning. Men speak of mutiny, led by Sir Eliezer Thorne and Janos Slynt. Still bitter for the precedent your choice sets. Jon closed his eyes. The wall felt far indeed. "I will reply with congratulations and pledge timber and men once harvest comes." "Your harvest is axes and spears, my lord." Davos stood in the doorway now, arms crossed. "Mallister may need them sooner. And Ramsay Bolton waits for us to divide." Jon rose, shoulders stiff. "We cannot fight two wars." Stannis joined them before the war table, Melisandre's shadow flickering beside. "Then the Boltons must be broken first. Every raven that flies east is another leak in our hull. Seal one breach before bailing another. Men descend." Yet even as they planned, ravens arrived bearing darker tidings. Balon Greyjoy's black sails harried the stony shore. Queen Regent Cersei had sent riders to the Twins, urging Frey men to avenge Robb Stark's death anew. Talk of a new red wedding whispered through hearth files. Winter's drumbeat quickened. Now, the march on the Dreadfort began beneath an aurora of green fire, as Melisandre lit towers of pitch-soaked logs beyond Winterfell's moat. The night skies shimmered emerald and violet, like a shattered rainbow hammered into darkness. Some men swore it was a sign of the Lord of Light. Others said it was the old god's lanterns burning. Jon merely watched, feeling the hair rise on his arms. They set out at dawn, 3,000 men in patchwork ranks. Baratheon knights in dented, antlered helms, Karstark spears with sunburst blazons, tarnished near black Mormont women in bearskin cloaks, wildlings wearing bone charms and ragged wool. At the head rode Jon on a gray courser named Frostfang, long claw strapped across his back, Ghost loping at his stirrup like a silent herald of vengeance. Frost squealed beneath hooves. Breath steamed. Songs rose. Some half-remembered descants of the first men, others bawdy tunes taught by sailors at Eastwatch. They pushed through drifts waist-high, following frozen rivers where water murmured beneath thin ice. Scouts vanished into pine labyrinths searching for Bolton traps. A week passed, then 9 days. Campsites stank of wood smoke and cold grease, tents snapped like sails in gales heavy with sleet. Still, they advanced. On the 12th night, they reached the banks of the weeping water, its surface crusted but not safe. Beyond lay hills studded with flayed men pylons. Bolton territory. Fires burned on distant rises, watch beacons. The army hunkered in a copse of dead pines while Stannis convened council beneath a canvas pavilion lit by iron braziers. Maps were spread, stones holding corners. "We cannot cross the river here." Sir Godry Faring said, prodding the vellum. "Ice will crack. We must swing west to the ford at Lord's Grove." "Bolton will expect that," Davos countered. "He'll mine the banks with caltrops set pits." "We march east then," Jon offered, tracing a finger. The shivering wood hides a ravine shallow enough to bridge with felled trees. My father once hunted there. Stannis grunted. A hunter again, Lord Snow? Good. Fell your trees, but do it without noise. Melisandre's voice slid like oil across steel. The flames whisper a different path. A secret road beneath the river where stone giants drowned in ages past. Their bones form pillars. The faithful may cross. Stannis looked at her as though weighing a blade. We shall keep our faith with axes and ropes. Bones shift. Plans settled like frost. Jon left the tent and found Ghost outside, muzzle lifted to sniff the wind. Distant howls answered, not wolves but dogs, high and cruel. Ramsay's hounds. Jon's hand found Ghost's ruff. Soon, he murmured. And they crossed at Shivering Wood Ravine 2 nights later, axes muffled with strips of rawhide to dull their bite. Trees fell with soft groans. Plank bridges slid into place. Half the army moved by moonlight, cloaks dusted violet by drifting aurora. Dawn exposed them on Bolton land. Horns shrieked from watchtowers. Signal fires blazed. Ramsay Bolton rode out at noon with 200 cavalry, their horses barded in red flayed men. He halted atop a ridge, his smile a smear of blood. Flayed corpses swung from poles behind him, fingers missing, skins peeled down to white muscle. A standard ripped in wolfwind snapped above. The stark direwolf painted upside down. Jon rode forward with Davos and Lady Alice at his flanks. Between lines of hoarfrost grass, the two hosts faced each other under a sky bruised purple. Ramsay's laugh rose, thin and sharp. Bastard to bastard, he called. Did the crows teach you to peck carrion? You'll feast on your own guts ere this day ends. Damn. Ghost prowled up. Hackles lifted, a white phantom against drab earth. Ramsay's horse shied, and the bastard of Bolton jerked its reins viciously. I'll take your wolf's pelt for my bride's wedding cloak. Jon's voice carried over wind. You must catch him first. Ramsay's grin widened. I will. I catch all I desire. Snow sifted between them, fine as salt. Time seemed to still. Then horns bellowed, horses screamed, and the field erupted. End of sow. It was not one battle but 3. Cavalry smashed into spears on the western flank while footmen ground together in slush foaming pink. In the center, Jon fought on foot. Frostfang slain beneath him by a quarrel through the eye. Longclaw whirled, black steel streaked red, carving space in a press of leather and iron. Ghost darted like a pale specter, dragging screaming men from saddles. At Jon's side, Lady Alice hacked a Bolton banner-bearer in half so clean. The man did not fall until a gust blew him apart. Ramsay moved through the field with uncanny speed, 2 axes flashing. He passed within 10 strides of Jon, carving down a Karstark boy, but vanished in a churn of mounted guards. Jon tried to follow. A mace glanced his helm, staggering him. He ducked, slashed, felt bone part. Around him, the cries of dying men rose like a storm of crows. By dusk, the Boltons broke. Hemmed between the river and burning wagons, Davos had fired from the rear. Ramsay fled with a knot of horsemen, hounds snapping at their heels. Stannis spurred pursuit, spears glinting crimson in torchlight like a tide of dragonfire. The Dreadfort's gates slammed shut just ahead of them, but the king had siege ladders ready. Ramsay vanished inside as darkness swallowed the walls. Jon's army encamped in a half-ruined village 2 miles south, fires flickering within roofless shells. Wounded groaned, healers scurried like mice. Jon walked among them until he found a boy of 13 clutching a stump where his hand had been, the lad who had stroked Ghost's ear. Jon knelt, pressed a waterskin to cracked lips, whispered that Winterfell awaited him. The boy tried to smile, tears mixed with soot. Jon thought his heart might crack. In Stannis' pavilion, the king pinned a new plan to the table. Siege towers by dawn, rams by noon, wildfire pots scavenged from burned wagons. Melisandre spoke of stormfires and sacrifice, her eyes fixed on Jon in a way that chilled the marrow. Davos argued that walls built by flayers held horrors best starved, not stormed. Stannis listened to none. Battle lust had carved iron into his brow. Jon slept in a cowshed. Ghost curled as heater at his back. Dreams came of crypt shadows, of Rob's voice warning, of a babe's cry echoing through stone. He woke before dawn with frost on his beard. The sky glowed sickly green again. Somewhere far away a horn blew 3 long blasts, a signal from the wall that once meant death walking. The sound faded into wind, yet Jon felt its tremor along his bones. He rose, buckled sword, and stepped into a day that tasted of ash. And now, Ziga towers crawled toward the Dreadfort like wounded giants. Arrows hammered their hides. Jon led the second push, shield raised, Ghost leaping between ramparts. Fire churned above, bright green florets vomiting black smoke as Bolton alchemists hurled jars of burning oil. Men screamed as flesh melted from bone. But the towers rolled on, grinding closer. Ladders clattered against crenellations. Northmen swarmed up, howling oaths. Jon climbed amid them, Longclaw tasting Bolton blade. On the parapet, the fight became a butcher's board. Ramsay appeared again, axes slick. "Snow!" he shrieked, voice cracked with frenzy. "Your skin will warm my father's bones." Jon met him, steel singing. Ramsay's axes hammered. Jon parried, felt shock jar up arms. Snow tumbled from his hair into his eyes. Ramsay lunged, feinted, clipped Jon's pauldron. Pain flared white. Jon countered, edge biting through fur collar to nick flesh. Ramsay laughed, shook off blood, attacked anew. Thunder rolled, unnatural, deep. The parapet shuddered. Men staggered as a crimson flash burst from the courtyard. Melisandre's fires, risen high as cathedral spires, fed by pitch pits secreted beneath siege rams. Flames licked walls, coursed over rampart like living serpents. Ramsay reeled, eyes wide, distracted. Just enough. Jon's next stroke took his left axe, snapping shaft. Ramsay stumbled. Ghost lunged from smoke, jaws locking on Ramsay's sword arm. Bones cracked. Ramsay screamed, tried to wrench free. Jon drove Longclaw through quilted brigandine into the soft beneath ribs. Silence claimed him. Ghost released, muzzle crimson. Ramsay Bolton sagged to knees, eyes alight with disbelief, then slumped into snow seething from stone. A horn keened from the far tower. Bolton men throwing down arms, flags aflame. The gate swung inward. Stannis rode through on a black charger, antlered helm bright in fire glare, a conqueror carved of obsidian and wrath. By nightfall, the Dreadfort was ashes and ghosts. Nah. They returned to Winterfell amid banners rippling wolf and stag together. Storm crows traced across pewter skies. Snow fell in sighing veils thick as wool. Jon wore mail newly buffed, cloak washed free of gore. At his side walked Mance Rayder, unshackled. His people's future hammered into uncertain alliance. Behind trundled wagons laden with grain stolen from Bolton stores, and prisoners bound for northern judgment. The great hall brimmed with bodies, Karstarks, Manderleys, even a pair of burly umbers who arrived wind-blown and grim, but raising horns of ale to toast the bastard who became a wolf. Lady Lyanna Mormont stood on a bench to be seen above men twice her height, declaring Bear Island's undying loyalty. Songs echoed, hammers clanged. The wolf banners unfurled. At dusk Jon stood before the heart tree once more. His breath misted. The faces carved in the weirwood watched, impassive. He laid Longclaw across exposed roots, knelt, and spoke. Winterfell is free. Yet winter itself is not defeated. The true enemy marches behind winds colder than memory. Grant me strength to face it. He closed his eyes. A breeze stirred scarlet leaves, and somewhere deep the sound of a great wing beating the air seemed to rise. A distant thunder beyond the world's curve. When he rose, a figure waited. Melisandre, eyes aglow in ember light. "You have slain one enemy," she whispered. "Another wakes in the northmost shadows, ancient as the ice you abandoned." Jon's hand found ghost fur. "I know. The Lord of Light has shown me your sword burning with dawnfire, seen you walk through snow that melts beneath your steps. But fire burns flesh as well as darkness. Remember that, Jon Stark. He met her gaze without flinching. I am snow and stark both, ice and fire. If I must burn, let it be to keep the north alive. She smiled, a curve of lips that held neither warmth nor cruelty, but recognition of something inevitable. So the tale turns. And nights lengthened. Ravens brought word of white-cloaked dead wandering frost fangs. The watch begged for crossbow bolts hard as dragon glass. Jon ordered smiths to cast arrowheads from the black glass caches Samwell Tarly had found. Karstark forges hissed day and night. Manderley ships braved frozen seas, ferrying grain and men to Eastwatch. Wildlings built new villages in forest clearings, tested iron axes against hoar-trunked oaks. Yet even as northern strength knitted, whispers spread of shadows moving beyond the wall. Of giants with eyes like chips of moonstone. Of children's laughter echoing inside dead hearths. Jon dreamed of crypts again, doors opening, cold kings rising. In those dreams, he stood between them and a distant blaze he could neither reach nor flee. One dawn ghost growled at the door. A raven waited, feathers ruffled, scroll bound with twist of gold. Jon unrolled it, hand steady yet heart racing. The seal of the night's watch broke under his thumb. 4 words painted in ink dark as midnight. They are coming. And see. The world seemed to pause. Snowflakes hung unmoving in icy air. Winterfell's walls groaned as if aware. Jon closed the note, felt its weight, though it was only parchment. Behind him, nested in the hush, he heard the faint crack of a hearth log shifting. Or was it something deeper, older, awakening? He turned, Longclaw's hilt cool beneath his palm, and stepped toward whatever tomorrow held. A lord caught between snow and flame, bound to fight until 5-hour tales were dust, and only the north endured. Oh, yeah. PGSQL. The raven's warning weighed more than iron, yet it could not be lodged inside a breastplate or swung like Valyrian steel. Jon carried it nonetheless, descending to the hall where dawnfires guttered low, and council waited in shifting lamplight. Stannis stood at the high table, fingers drumming the map's curled edge. Davos hovered, eyes red from stolen sleep. Melisandre gazed into nothing, as though reading flame letters on the air itself. Jon set the parchment down. 3 blasts, he said. Dead things walking. Silence rippled. Stannis' knuckles whitened. How many? The raven names no number. Perhaps the wall drowned the sound before count could be taken. Davos sighed. If the wind carried 3 calls at all, the dead must be close indeed. Jon felt the council's gaze tilt toward him like lances. He cleared his throat. We have 700 spears in Winterfell fit to march. Grain enough for half that many through a long siege. Stores meant for spring planting have been raided twice already by bandits fleeing deeper snows. If we march north, Winterfell starves. If we stay, the wall falls. Stannis' jaw flexed. The realm cannot lose either. Choose. It was no choice. Jon looked at the black iron chandelier overhead, candles melting slow tears. I ride at first light with 200 chosen. Mormont axes, Karstark spears, wildling archers. We take wagons of dragon glass and pitch. The rest remain to hold Winterfell and harvest what little can be coaxed from frost fields. Bendo. Stannis studied him as a smith might study flawed ore. I ride with you. Your grace. Davos began, but Stannis cut him off with a gaze like a falling portcullis. Bolton is ash. Frey hides in stone castles, trembling at wolf songs. The north will bend or break with, or without my crown nailed above its hearth. But if the wall shatters, every crown from dawn to the neck melts in undead fingers. I will see its stones with my own eyes. Jon released breath he had not known he held. Then, we ride together. Melisandre's smile glimmered red. Fire rides with you. Let the cold heed. Preparations devoured the day. Smiths poured molten glass into arrow molds, and quenched them in snow so fast steam whirled like battle spirits. Bakers packed hardtack laced with pine nut to stave scurvy. Hostlers shod horses with new frost claws of barbed iron. Maester Tybalt dipped quills until his fingers bled, drafting missives summoning every Hearthguard able to march to Winterfell's defense. The banners of Manderley, Ricewell and Hornwood hung in the rafters like silent witnesses. No one knew if their lords would answer before the snow sealed passes. At dusk, Jon stood atop Winterfell's rampart, watching aurora ribbons unspool across the heavens. Curtains of ghost light rippling violet, green, bruised dark blue. Ghost crouched beside him, fur shimmering silver in the alien glow. A hush fell over courtyard bustle. Children, soldiers, washerwomen alike stared upward as though divine scripture had been etched upon the sky. "Old Nan called it the Frostfire," murmured Alice Karstark, appearing at Jon's elbow. Her cheeks were raw from the forge, eyes fever bright. Said it shone brightest when the others drew near. Jon did not look away from the rolling colors, then let it burn bright enough for all men to see. She touched the wolf and stag badge on his cloak. "Bring my cousin Harrien home from the ice, my lord." "If he yet lives," Jon answered. "He will walk through Winterfell's gate again." He hoped the words were not a lie. And shall. They left before dawn, hooves muffled by a night's fresh fall. 200 shoulders bent beneath snow-dusted cloaks, banners furled to lances to avoid announcing colors to any ghost thing that might crave heraldry. Stannis rode at the column's head, astride his black destrier. Antlered helm lashed to his saddle, but crownless brow bared to the slicing wind. Jon kept pace slightly behind, Ghost ranging ahead like a pale spearpoint. Melisandre traveled within a wagon hung with crimson cloth. From its slits spilled ember glow, and the occasional plume of scented smoke, clove and pine pitch interwoven. The road north skirted the ruins of villages raided by Ironborn years past. Roofs collapsed under the weight of neglect and sleet, doors open like mouthless screams. They paused only long enough to search for grain or salted meats, and bodies. In one cottage, Davos found the bones of a family huddled around a cold hearth, fingers locked as if sharing final warmth. The Sellswords, who had stripped the house of valuables, left the dead, a single cracked cup, half filled with ice. Jon ordered the bones burned, muttering a prayer to old gods and new. The flames hissed blue, as though the bones themselves still remembered the chill. After 7 days, the first of the Fleetfoot ravens found them. Birds from Bear Island bearing Lady Lyanna's seal. The note relayed that 2 longships loaded with pickled fish and wooden shields had set sail for Eastwatch, escorted by Mormont archers. Jon read it twice, folded it against his heart. Such small hopes felt starshine against a glacier, yet they warmed, if only in memory. The weather worsened. Needle flurries turned to blankets of wet snow that clung to beards like fungus, weighing cloaks until they dragged. Twice they were forced to halt to dig out wagons mired axle-deep in drifts. Men cursed and laughed with equal bitterness, but each delay buried them further behind schedule. Fires at night became muted affairs. Pits dug down to old soil, embers covered before dawn to conceal the black rope of smoke curling into gray twilight. Yet even smothered, the scent of warmth drew watchers. Tracks appeared around camp. Not wolf, not man either. Prints like twin crescents with a dragline between, as though some great broken insect had crawled along hunting the spark of blood. On the 11th day, a blizzard struck with a violence that shattered morale. Snowflakes grew fat as feathers, swirling so dense the world shrank to a ring of white, a dozen paces wide. Horses balked. Men stumbled into drifts and vanished until ropes hauled them flailing back. Stannis halted the column beneath the broken shell of an ancient watchtower marking the southern edge of the gift. Orders barked to shovel out a lee beneath its eaves. Fires were lit despite risk, without them lungs crisp. Jon found Melisandre kneeling outside her wagon, palms upturned to catch falling snow that melted before contact, leaving steam curls. Her eyes glowed ember red through the storm's pall. "The storm is theirs," she said as he approached, voice low yet carrying. "They ride on wind that kills breath in lungs. Can you gentle it?" Jon asked, half a jest but half a plea. "Fire gentles nothing." She replied, "It devours what opposes." She lifted a brazier from the wagon, set it before her in the snow, and whispered Valyrian words. The coals whooshed, blazing high despite the blizzard's howl. Sparks danced upward, colliding mid-air with flakes. Each spark flared green and died. Jon watched until eyes watered. "Is that working?" "Not yet," she murmured. "But the Dark Watch is back. It knows my name." He left her to her murmuring spells and trudged into the tower ruin, where Stannis brooded over a charcoal sketch of the gift. The king's cheeks burned raw, lips cracked. A day lost means to tomorrow. Stannis growled. "We break camp at sunrise, storm or no." Jon clasped arms around his ribs. "Marching blind will kill half the horses. We need them for retreat if the wall is broken, there will be no retreat." Jon met the king's icy stare. He thought of Aemon's tales of prophecy, of Azor Ahai and Lightbringer, of a promised champion. The old maester had dreaded Stannis' zeal, yet whispered once that hope often masquerades as doom. Jon did not know which war which face tonight. Dawn arrived like a gray bruise. The storm lessened, but did not cease. They pressed on, men moving in ghostly silence, broken only by brass tick of bridles and the whine of sledges pulled by shaggy oxen. Around midday, Ghost padded back to Jon, muzzle rimed in iced blood. The dire wolf whined once, then bounded ahead in loping urgency. Jon signaled halt, unslung his horn, and followed Ghost with a dozen outriders. The dire wolf led them into a shallow dell where a single standing stone jutted from the snow. Around its base lay 5 corpses. Wildlings by the look of patchwork hides, each throat torn out. Their eyes stared glassy and black, snow-filled mouths frozen in screams. One was missing both hands. Another's chest cavity had been scooped hollow, yet blood stained the snow only in dark flakes, as though they had bled icicles. Ghost snarled at the tree line beyond. Jon scanned the shadows. Nothing moved, not even branches. He dismounted and knelt by the handless dead. Under his glove the flesh felt brittle, a doll carved of frozen cheese. He prayed silently, then signaled the outriders to drag the bodies atop a pyre of broken branches. Fire was lit. Violet flames licked high, sparked by dragonglass dust sprinkled from a pouch at Jon's belt. The smell was foul, sweet, and sour at once. When the smoke rose black, the horses reared, nearly unseating 2 riders. Jon steadied his mount, eyes watering. Far away but ringing clear, he thought he heard another horn blast, one long and lonely. Stannis accepted the delay with a glare sharp enough to flay bark, yet said nothing more than, "Double scouts. The dead have eyes we do not." And they moved faster after that, though the snow deepened. Every man knew the sky watched, that each flake might carry a shard of ancient malice. Oh. By sunset of the 15th day, the wall loomed. A cliff of blue shadow blurred by blowing powder. Castle Black's towers rose crooked at its base, fires glimmering faint within arrow slits. No horn sounded welcome. Jon felt Goot twist. They crossed the bridge of marbled ice, hooves striking echoes like shattering glass. The gate rose slow, spearheads gleamed from the walkway. First through was Jon, Ghost pacing. A column of black cloaks met him in the yard, crossbows leveled. "Hold," Jon called. "It's Snow, or Stark now if you must." One figure lowered hood. Ser Dinis Mallister, patrician face gaunt. "You come at last, Lord. Whichever," he rasped. "We feared you lost to winter." Jon swung down. Raven said 3 blasts. "What threat?" Mallister gestured toward the outer yard. "See for yourself." Lanterns led them to a line of bodies lashed to upright timbers outside the east palisade. 9 in all. Whites, or what remained, charred black from neck to knee. Their eyes glowed faintly behind melted lids, a dim cyan flicker. Chains bound each limb and spike. Beneath their feet pits had been dug where charcoal smoldered. They jerked and hissed like serpents but made no sound. Stannis' arrival had muted them with drawn swords ready. Caught them creeping from the forest 2 nights past. Ser Dinis said. They walked swift as living men yet silent as cats. We burned 2, hacked 3, chained the rest for study. He eyed Melisandre, who stepped close, red gem at her throat pulsing. The dead strained from heat, jaws working though no words issued. They feel fire. She murmured, voice tinged with something like wonder. But do they fear? Stannis spat. Kill them all. There's study enough in ashes. Mallister shook head. I would. It is my right. But Maester Mully begs for one intact to examine its binding. Says iron and fire weaken but some necromancy holds them still. Jon walked before the closest white. Charred skin clung to bone like boiled leather, yet faint frost rimed its teeth. He drew Longclaw, pressed Valyrian edge against the thing's collar. Instantly light flared within its eye sockets, brilliant blue. A high keening issued, mindless yet deliberate. Not from larynx, but from somewhere deeper, as though the blade itself offended cosmic geometry. Jon thrust and the head came off in one smooth arc. The body convulsed, then sagged. Its eyes dimmed to black. Ashes suffice, he said. Stannis nodded curtly. We ride at first light for Eastwatch. The Night King massed there by all accounts. Mallister's weary stance stiffened. Forgive, your grace. Eastwatch was abandoned 3 weeks ago. We hold Castle Black, nothing more. Wildling harbors scatter beyond the Shadow Tower, but word is fragment. Rangers returning speak of ice spiders near the gorge. Medsamu. Davos cursed under breath. Jon chewed a frost-laden lip. Then Eastwatch must be retaken or razed. The others cannot claim a port to slip whites down the broken coast. Melisandre stepped near Jon, eyes shining like superheated coals. The flames show a lord cloaked in snow standing upon a frozen shore while waves carry cold dead things to his feet. 3 fires must he light, one for life, one for death, one to bring dawn. Jon met her burning gaze. And which fire lies ahead? We walk the shadow of the first, she whispered. Now. At dawn they split. Jon, Stannis, and a host of 500 took the King's Road east, following the wall's base toward the ruined watchposts that once guarded the gorge. Mallister remained to hold Castle Black with what strength of old men and green the wall could muster. Before departure, Jon found himself standing with Dolorous Ed beside the silent potato fields where his brothers once trained. You look taller, Lord Stark, Eddie mused. Voice flat as ever. Must be those fancy southern stirrups. Jon clasped his friend's forearm. Hold the gate. Should I fall, bar it with my bones. Now. Oh, I will, Ed sighed. I've always wanted wall lord decorations. We'll position your skull above the latrine to remind newcomers about lingering too long. His smile held sadness as deep as the frost. They parted. Banners snapped as the host moved out, hooves crunching hard-packed snow that squealed beneath shoes like mice. Ghost trotted ahead, chasing the scent of spoor unseen. The first day's ride skirted the forest edge. Pines creaked under icy loads, their branches drooping like penitent penitents. At noon they found a ranger's cloak pinned to a tree by a spear of black ice. No body. Jon studied the spear. Dragonglass fused with ice crystal in an alien symmetry. When he touched it, with a mailed finger, the spear hummed, a music like wind across distant glass towers. He snapped the shaft and pocketed a shard. Camp that night nestled in the lee of a collapsed tower called Wormwood Watch. Fires were forbidden. Instead they huddled under firs, eating jerky so tough teeth ached. Melisandre alone sat in open snow, her unhooded hair blazing ruby in moonbeams, eyes fixed on a small copper torque warmed by ember chip. She whispered soundless words. Frost formed circles around her but would not touch her cloak. Jon dreamed of a door of ice and behind it, a boy's laughter. Bran's voice calling through dark corridors. Not yet, you can't come yet. He woke sweating. And now. 2 more days brought them to Long Barrow, the high ridge where old First Men chiefs stored their giant kin bones in cairns taller than watchtowers. Snow sculpted the mounds into white whales cresting a frozen sea. Between them flowed nests of wind swirling ragged banners of powder skyward. The watchers glimpsed shapes half seen, hunched forms prowling behind dunes, cries like flutes echoing. Some said they saw giants of ice striding between mounds, carrying clubs of frozen mist. No one lingered long enough to confirm. At dusk of the fourth day, Eastwatch rose ahead, or what remained. The great eastern seawall had collapsed into a chaotic spill of ice boulders. The keep's outer palisade lay in charred ruin. The wooden docks were gone, swallowed by frozen tide, replaced by a shattered forest of pilings protruding through ice floes like snapped bones. Gulls wheeled overhead, shrieking their own lament. Scouts returned. No movement, no fires, no sign of living or dead. Jon ordered torches lit. He and a cadre of 10 riders advanced across the shore flats, ghost padding silent behind. Inside the fallen gate, the courtyard sprawled under drifts. Snow had entered every door and window, climbing walls where shutters once resisted sea gales. The inner keep's roof sagged, an avalanche of ice waiting only a breath to fall. Jon dismounted under the broken bell tower. Its great bell lay half buried, mouth crushed. He ran gloved fingers along bronze dent. Blotches of tarnish ate the metal like rot. A creak sounded above. Jon snapped glance upward in time to see the roof give. Ice slabs slipped, crashed onto parapet. Yet from the billow of snow something leapt. Tall as a man but spindly, limbs too long. It landed with barely a sound 10 paces off, crystal talons gleaming blue in torchlight. Its face resembled an owl's mask carved from glacier glass, eyes aglow. A screech issued, high enough to crack icicles. Ghost lunged. The creature danced aside, leaving claw trails where feet touched. Jon ripped Longclaw free, stepped forward. The thing swiped, a blur. Steel met ice. Sparks spattered. The creature recoiled from Valyrian bite, but flowed sideways faster than thought. Torches closed. Shouting men. The thing hissed, retreated up the tower's collapsed staircase, moving not like climbing but floating between broken steps. Jon pursued to the ruin's apex, heart thundering, frost smoke streaming from mouth, to find only wind howling through shattered slats. Snow eddied in swirling vortex. Tick. No sign. Behind him, men-at-arms poked torches into shadow. One called, relieved. Found nothing but rats. Another cursed the cold. Jon sheathed sword, unease prickling. They quartered the keep, stacking corpses where they found them. 15 Night's Watch brothers, flesh glazed by salt, throats slashed by what looked like obsidian cuts. No white stirred, though some corpses had missing limbs. At dawn, pyres were lit. The smoke drifted east across broken sea ice like funeral parchment, unfurling. Stannis gathered council within the shell of the old map room, furnishings dusted with hoarfrost. Reports spoke of a great host marching, yet we find emptiness, he said. Davos rubbed stubble. Maybe they passed south along the coast into the Gift. Melisandre shook her head. Ice leaves shadow. The storm still sleeps north. We stand on the cusp only. Jon felt weight settle. They come by sea. All eyes turned. He pointed east where dawn limned the horizon, a dull pewter. Hardhome sits across the shivering sea's narrowest passage. Thousands of free folk fled there. If the Night King raises them, he gains an army beyond count. Ice floes could bear whites here quicker than we ride back. Davos cursed softly. Hardhome's a ruin, but with corpses. Stannis nodded grimly. Then we sail. No ships remain, Mallister objected. The old knight had arrived with 50 ragged survivors from the Shadow Tower, riding west across the top of the wall to join them. His lines etched deeper every hour. Ice has claimed every keel. Jon's gaze swept the frozen harbor. Jagged floes pressed against pilings where docks once stood. Yet beyond, farther out, the sea lay broken only in sheets. We carved the ice into rafts, lashed timbers, stretched sailcloth over frames. The free folk crossed water on shields and door planks when chiefs pressed them from frostfangs. We can do the same. Stannis' brows nodded. Time wastes, but carry on. He gestured to Davos. Summon carpenters. Every felled tree from the watch forest becomes hull. Work began with frantic urgency. Men swung axes until palms bled, sledging trunks to shore where shipwrights pounded dowels through frozen timber. Canvas awnings stripped from Eastwatch quarters became patchwork sails, stiff as tin. Melisandre watched from a bluff, her red gown whipping in gale, hair a streaked banner. Snow fell around her, but none settled. 3 days of toil birthed 6 crude barges, flat-bottomed rafts with low gunwales of plank and rawhide lashings. They named them Bear, Stag, Wolf, Kraken, Eagle, and Torch. Stannis refused to christen. The sea would be their judge. On the morning of launch, the wind smelled of brine beneath the frost, as though the deep stirred under its coffin lid. Jon captained Wolf. At his side stood Tormund Giantsbane, miraculously arrived at dawn with 200 raiders tramping from the west like a red-bearded avalanche. They'd followed rumors of a Stark prince walking south with a southern king. Tormund called it harebrained, but worth a look. Jon clasped his forearm tight enough to bruise. Tormund sniffed, eyes glittering. Smell that, crow. Dead men stink the wind. Time for axes and good songs. Sing after, Jon muttered. Yet he felt a grin flash, brief as starfall. The barges shoved from shore under a sky the color of old pewter. Oars carved slush. Sails snapped weakly, but a current tugged east. Cracks groaned beneath hulls, as though some leviathan slithered below. Men whispered prayers to every god and demon. Hours crawled. Fog thickened, swallowing sight until the fleet strung into murky twilight. Wolf's crew rode in eerie hush, save for Tormund's low hum of some obscene tune. Jon stood astern, scanning shifting mists. Ghost lay at prow, ears prick. Near midday a shape loomed, a jagged silhouette like inverted mountains. Hardhome, or the corpse of it. Burned palisades jutted like rotten teeth. Between gaps, faint movement. Jon felt a chill deeper than cold. A horn sounded from Torch. One blast. Friendly sighting. The fleet angled. As they neared the ruined harbor, Jon saw shapes clustering along the beach, figures limping, stumbling, arms outstretched in appeal. Survivors? Hearts leapt. But they did not cry out. Hold! Jon barked. Oars dug reverse. The barge slowed, prow slapping slush. Tormund shaded eyes. Those folk look odd. Then a shriek rang, not from any throat alive. The figures surged, mouths yawning impossibly wide, eyes bright coins of cyan, their flesh mottled gray, some gnawed to bone. A second line behind them parted, tall forms clad in armor of ice, carrying spears of frost that glimmered like skylances. The others. Loose! Jon roared. Arrows with dragon glass heads sailed, glinting purple. Where they struck, whites folded like puppets with strings cut, yet more climbed over them. The others advanced unhurried, spears level. One lifted hand. A gust of frigid wind blasted from shore, slamming sails, frosting beards and heartbeat. The barges jarred, ice creeping across gunwales. Melisandre's barge, Torch, blossomed light. The priestess stood at prow, arms spread. Flame erupted along the rails, coursed across sail, yet the cloth did not burn but glowed incandescent red. She spoke a word that cracked air. Fire leapt from her palms in twin spirals, lashing the waters. Fog boiled, revealing rows upon rows of whites standing in the breakers, packed so tight the sea could not be seen. Wolf rocked as heat waves struck. Ice on hull hissed away. Tormund laughed like a loon. Now there's a torch worth the name. Yet the others raised spears in response. From each point shot shards of purest night, bolts of solid cold. They pierced the steam, collided mid-air with Melisandre's flames. The clash birthed shockwaves. 2 barges jolted sideways, nearly capsizing. Men screamed as frost exploded across decks, flash-freezing limbs where shards grazed. One man toppled stiff, shattered on oak boards like porcelain. Row, Jon commanded. Swing starboard. Flank them. Oars bit water. Wolf angled to port of the beach, seeking narrower landing where rocks protruded. Ghost leapt across benches. Gnarling. Jon knocked arrow, sent it into a white walker's throat. The creature staggered, frost splintering, but did not fall until Tormund's thrown axe cleaved collar bone. The walker's armor cracked, entire frame exploding in crystalline dust. Where it fell, White's near collapsed, puppet strings severed. "Aim for masters," Tormund bellowed. Archers caught cue. Volley after volley of dragonglass sought the luminous eyes behind the ranks. Walkers strode forward, unbothered, until a bolt found seam at hip and another at knee. The one who first met Melisandre's flame faltered, dropping spear. Flames danced across its breast, not consuming but encasing in obsidian glass. The creature burst inward in gout of steam. The White slowed, leaderless pockets stiffening. Wolf grounded on shingle. Jon vaulted to shore, ghost beside. A wedge of Mormont women and Karstark spears formed behind him. Ahead, hard wooden steps led to what remained of Hardhome's great hall. More accurately, a charred skeleton. From within, blue glow pulsed. Jon climbed, heart hammering. Inside the ruin stood a throne fashioned of driftwood and ribs of whales, crowned by a skull of something vast, a giant's perhaps. Upon it sat a figure wearing robes of frost. Its face was neither walker nor human, features smoothed by centuries into an androgynous mask of ice. In its lap lay a horn, curved like mammoth tusk, blacker than midnight edged in silver runes. The figure's eyes flared brightest yet. Jon stepped forward, long claw raised. The horned figure watched in silence. Melisandre entered behind, flames orbiting her like will-o'-the-wisps. Tormund and half-dozen guards fanned left. "Who are you?" Jon asked, though he expected no answer. The figure's lips parted. A voice issued, low as glaciers grinding, yet words shaped by some ancient tongue. Jon felt mind reel. Every syllable seemed carved from grief older than kingdoms. Ice condensed on his sword. Melisandre replied in high Valyrian. Her tone dripped challenge. Flame brightened, countering frost. Steam roiled. The figure lifted the horn. Even unblown it moaned. A sound of morning winds. Jon's gut knotted. He sensed promise of doom should it sound. He charged. The figure raised a hand. Frost erupted from floor. A jagged crystal wall thrust up between. Long claw bit, but the ice warped, absorbing. Tormund's axe shattered crystal shards. Melisandre thrust both palms. Flame tongues drilled holes. Jon vaulted through, rolling over razor spines, came up within sword's reach. The figure attempted to lower horn to lips. Jon swung. Long claw crashed into horn. A note sounded, pure, terrible, like the cry of some world-ending bird. The blast knocked everyone backward, even Ghost. Jon felt bones shake, blood hum. Yet the horn did not break. The figure half smiled. It began second attempt. Melisandre screamed a word of power, and hurled herself forward. Ruby at her throat blazing until impossible white rivulets raced across her skin. Her hands grabbed the horn. Fire bled from her eyes. The figure's frost-wrought palms clashed. Steam hissed. Wood and ice fused, then cracked. Jon slashed downward, shearing the horn at midpoint. A roar like a mountain tearing open filled the hall. Frost exploded outward. Fire swept center. The figure staggered, half of horn crumbling like ash. Where flame licked its chest, runes glowed, then fractured. The mask fissured. From within stared a face of glass tears. It opened mouth, but sound came only as falling shards. The body collapsed, fracturing into a swirl of snowflakes that evaporated before touching ground. Silence crashed down. Far outside the ruin, above Hardhome's cliffs, the wail of thousands rose. Whites freed from command, shrieking as bonds snapped. On the beach they dropped where they stood, inert corpses once more. Along the horizon, a ridge of blue light pulsed, then dimmed, like a dying beacon. Jon's heartbeat thundered in ears. He knelt, picked up the largest fragment of horn, smoother than obsidian yet lighter than air. It felt warm. He slipped it into cloak. Melisandre slumped to knees, smoke rising from her hair. Her red gem flickered weakly. Tormund helped her up, muttering, "Fire woman burns from both ends." Outside, dawn broke through ragged cloud. Sunlight, pale but sure, spilled over the ruined harbor. Ice shimmered gold. Dead men lay still. Walkers gone. Stannis strode across sand, antlered helm under arm. "Ended?" he asked. Jon met his eyes. For now. He looked out to sea beyond the floes. The horizon simmered. He felt the world shifting like tectonic plates underfoot. And by midday, they burned hard home. Rafts laden with white corpses were towed out and torched, sending pillars of black smoke swirling into heavens. The ruins burned with them, nor pine nor oak, but char and memory. Ships of wind perhaps carried the last screams north. Tormund knelt on a rock, staring at flame towers. Free folk called this place our last hope. Now it's last ash. Jon put a hand on his shoulder. Hope can be rebuilt. The wildling's eyes were red though tears froze on lashes. But bones remain. They left by dusk, sails patched but serviceable. Storm clouds parted, revealing sky of crisp sapphire. No aurora danced. On Wolf's deck ghost lay curled, muzzle on paws. Jon stroked his fur. The horn fragment rested in pouch at his belt, pulsing faint warmth. He did not show it to any man save one. Late that night he found Stannis at prow, gazing east where stars birthed new constellations. Jon offered the fragment. Part of a weapon perhaps, or a key. Menduand. Stannis turned it over, eyes glinting. The myths speak of Horn of Winter, to wake giants from earth and bring wall down. This broke instead. Maybe it was its twin. The king handed it back. Keep it. Fire and ice mingle in you, boy. Perhaps that is some cursed blessing. Just use it wisely. Jon returned fragment to pouch. He stared out at dark water dotted with floes cresting in moonlight like frozen ghosts. Distant thunder rumbled though sky was clear. He wondered if some leviathan moved beneath, disturbed from ice sleep. And now, they reached Eastwatch in 2 days, battered but alive. Scouts met them with news that Freys marched from Green Fork, banners of leaping trout below Frayed Cross. Roose Bolton's cousin had claimed lordship of the Dreadfort and gathered mercenaries from White Harbor outlaws. Whisperers reported Cersei's gold cloaks, plotting to interdict northern grain convoys. Winterfell still stood, but winter marched with greater teeth than Bolton's ever bared. Stannis convened last council in Eastwatch Hall before columns returned to Wall or South. Melisandre announced that her fire spoke of 3 betrayals yet to come: blood, love, and crowned. Davos argued for sending riders to Dragonstone, pleading with Queen Daenerys rumored sailing from Essos. Mallister wanted to fortify every tower with scorpions. Tormund swore to rally giants if any still survived. Jon listened then spoke. The Night King is wounded, but not ended. He will seek new heralds. Every corpse is potential soldier. We must burn our dead, yes, but also burn away the hate that keeps us divided. Free folk, Northmen, Kneelers, even Southron kings, we fight the same shadow. Bennawain. Stannis stared, unreadable. At length he nodded. You persuade like steel persuades flesh. Sharpen that edge. We rebuild Eastwatch for now. He turned to counsel. Any man unwilling to fight the dead may march south, but he forfeits honor. I will grant no pardons for deserters of the living. No one spoke otherwise. When Jon returned to Winterfell weeks later, he found walls adorned with new banners. The Manderly merman flew beside House Riswell's horse head, Umber's roaring giant over the gatehouse. Grain wagons lined the yard. The smell of bread at last overcame the stench of tallow. Lady Lyanna met him in the hall. We heard the tale. A horn shattered and Ice Kings fled. Her fierce eyes softened. You saved more than you know. Jon only shook his head. Saved a dawn, not the day. That night, among oaths and wine, he walked the godswood, heart tree glowing crimson in torchlight. He knelt. The horn fragment warmed his palm. Words came unbidden. Shapes of fate swirling like smoke. "Old gods," he whispered. "I am snow and stark. Blood of wolf and ice, forged now in fire. If I must suffer 3 betrayals, then let them bend me, not break. Grant me the sight to know friend from shadow. Grant me courage to burn when dawn demands." Then a wind passed, stirring red leaves. One brushed his cheek, warm as breath. He opened eyes to see Ghost sitting before trunk, head cocked, ears erect. Between direwolf's paws lay another piece of black horn, tiny but unmistakable. Jon picked it up. The pieces pulsed in unison. He rose. Somewhere beyond the wall of trees he heard the smiths singing at their forges, blending iron and dragon glass into new shapes. Somewhere south, mothers told children a white wolf held winter at bay. And somewhere north, in caverns, none dared map. The Night King regrew flesh of frost around ancient bones. Eyes burning anew with vengeance promised. Winter held many hours yet before the sun would rise full on the realm. But dawn had a name now, and it was carved on a blade of dark star metal cradled by a man who once was bastard. Jon Snow, Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, turned toward the hall's distant torches. The wind whispered, and he thought, perhaps it carried a promise not of death but of endurance. He would need both endurance and fire for the chapters yet unwritten. Behind him the heart tree watched, silent, but its face seemed, in the shifting torchlight, almost to smile. "Yeah, call. PGSQL." Late frost glimmered on the battlements of Winterfell as the moon dipped westward, painting the keep in argent rivulets that slipped between rampart stones like liquid steel. Jon Snow stood alone above the gatehouse, cloak flared by an east wind heavy with brine from the shivering sea. Far beyond the dark ridges of forest and low hillocks, the horizon wore a halo of pearl gray, dawn whispering its approach beneath a sky clouded with gauzy cirrus and pinpricks of receding stars. Beneath his hand the stone felt colder than before Hardhome, as if the castle itself sensed the wound he had carved in the Night King's design, and froze in wary anticipation of reprisal. Below, Wintertown drowsed in pools of lantern light. Snow had sifted atop thatch roofs until each house seemed a mound of pale bread. Nocturnal hearth sparks drifted from chimneys, blinking in the dark like slow fireflies before vanishing into drifting powder. Somewhere, a dog barked, a young voice trembling against the cold. Jon's thoughts drifted to Ghost, patrolling the outer woods with a confidence no man could match. The direwolf's absence left a gap in the night's orchestra, an unheard note that nonetheless demanded attunement. "You never sleep," rumbled Tormund Giantsbane as he climbed the stair with a flask of ale in hand. Icicles glittered in the raider's beard. "Must be all them titles weigh heavier than blankets." Jon managed a tired smile. "Must be the wind," he offered. Tormund leaned on a crenel, gazing into the swirling gap where wind-lifted snow danced above the moat. "You hear the whisper?" he asked quietly, uncharacteristically so. "Sometimes when blast of cold catches just right, I'd swear the snow itself sings. A song of teeth." Jon nodded. He had heard it. A keening threaded through the gusts, neither wailing nor whistling, but a scraped lament that raked at memory. "They're gathering," he said. "Every fire we pour into the night only lights their path. Then we pour more fires." Tormund lifted the flask. "The giants are coming. O Mag, the mighty's cousins. Those that still breathe free air. I sent horncall by Rick the runner 2 days past. They'll answer. They know the world's bones tremble same as we." Jon exhaled fog. "Giants will be welcome, but food grows scarce." Grain stores from White Harbor arrived half-spoiled. The shipmaster said southern harbors are blockaded by Frey galleys and ironborn scouting longships. From Pike or from Deepwood I cannot tell. "And now," Tormund spat over the wall, a dark spatter lost in white. "Let the squids choke on their own salt. Giants don't eat grain. They gnaw pine bark if need be, or suck marrow from dead mammoths frozen since the Dawn Age." He chuckled. "And they'll fight for the right to keep doing so." "I hope that is enough," Jon murmured. "When the true night arrives, bark and marrow, may be all any of us have left. The wildling clapped him on the shoulder, a blow like a blacksmith's mallet. Cheer up, Lord Crow. We fought worse odds than tall tales about sky ghosts. And you carry star steel in your fist. That counts. Star steel won't fill bellies, Jon replied. Yet some ember of resolve glowed warmer beneath the layers of worry. He watched Tormund descend the steps, humming a bawdy tune about bear maidens and ale that echoed into gloom before fading into Wintertown's hush. Jon's thoughts slipped backward, to hard home, to the shattering of the icy monarch, and the horn fragment pulsing warm as heart fire in his belt pouch. He had scoured Maester Tybalt's library for references, unrolled dusty skins that spoke of the horn of Joramun, of children of the forest forging bone from starlight, of dragons bound by tympanic thunder. Yet none fit the shard's smooth black surface, or its vein-like filaments of molten silver. Even Melisandre, when he had revealed it in candle-dim privacy, had only bowed her head and murmured, "The fire in it sleeps, awaiting pain to wake." Pain. He had enough of that stored in scars and memories, yet some instinct cautioned him not to temper the fragment against his own anguish. At least not until the tapestry of prophecy wove clearer patterns. For now it remained in his keeping, an ember of unknown dawn. A soft footstep on new snow behind him. Jon turned to find Lady Alice Karstark, hair bound in a simple braid, dark eyes luminous beneath the half-light. She wore a thick riding cloak pinned with a silver sunburst, the makeshift sigil she had adopted while her house's ancestral banner was mended. "My lord," she greeted quietly. "Sir Davos just arrived from the coast. He begs your counsel in the East Solar." Jon's brow furrowed. "Is the fleet returned so soon?" They were meant to escort Manderley ships past Ironborn raiders. "No fleet," Alice said. "Just a raven and a prisoner." "Gun?" Warm lamplight flickered within the East Solar where Davos Seaworth waited beside a hooded figure, bound at wrists, but standing proud nevertheless. Steam curled from the knight's wet cloak, puddling around sharpened boot spurs. At Jon's entrance, the smuggler dipped his head. "Found this one skulking near the bargeman's hut by the White Knife," Davos explained. "Claims he brings parley on behalf of, well, best you hear it spoken." The prisoner pushed back his hood. Pale blonde hair spilled. A fray. No, tawdy. The features beneath were sharp, hawk-boned. Lips quirked with detached amusement. Eyes, green-gold like sunlit moss, fixed Jon without hesitation. "Lord Snow," the stranger said, voice smooth as oiled leather, with a faint lilt of the Riverlands. "I am Sir Lancel Frey no longer. The name I answer to now is Sir Auric of the Black Bells, but neither title matters half as much as the message I carry. Queen Cersei sends her greetings and her condolences for your prospective defeat." Davos scowled. Bold words for a man wrapped in irons. "Irons are temporary, Onion Knight." Auric's smile curved. "But winter and dragons, those endure. My queen proposes a bargain. Winterfell's neutrality in the coming southern offensive, in exchange for grain shipments immune to Ironborn mischief, and a formal recognition of your lordship. The crown will deem House Stark restored, provided you bend the knee in writing. No oaths demanded in person. Cersei understands travel is dangerous." "Now?" Jon stared. "The crown murdered my brother and mother at a wedding, burned my father's portrait in the throne room. You truly think grain will bind that wound?" "Nah. Not grain alone." Sir Auric replied, sliding a gloved hand into his doublet to produce a parchment sealed in crimson wax. "The queen also offers a bridal match, one of her nephews perhaps, or her cousin Tyrick returned from obscurity. Royal blood for northern ice, meld them, and the north stands elevated." Anger churned like sour milk. Jon took the parchment, broke the seal, scanned the flowing letters. He read not to the end. Heat rushed his cheeks. "She calls me Lord Protector of the Snows, like some pet to be paraded." Davos snorted. "She thinks us starved enough to eat indignity." Ulrich inclined his head. If you refuse, the Queen will bless Walder Frey's claim to the Dreadfort and dispatch southern levies, Tyrell spears and Lannister crossbows, north in spring. Your walls might hold, but your fields will feed only crows. Choose. Jon breathed slow. Memory surfaced of famine tales old Nan had shared. Children boiled shoe leather. Mothers traded names of buried infants for flour sacks. Winter was seldom merciful. But the Crown's hand had guided horrors of its own making. The Red Wedding, Ned Stark's execution. Acceptance would cheapen every drop of Stark blood. I'll take news to my council, he said. You will wait in a room with a locked door and a hot meal. I will not shackle a messenger so long as you bring no harm. Sir Ulrich bowed with theatrical grace. Comfort, Lord Stark, is always a welcome host. Jon nodded to Davos. The smuggler gestured 2 guards to escort the envoy. When they were gone, Davos pulled a rolled map from beneath his cloak and spread it on the table. Ironborn raids worsen, he said, tapping coastal markings with a scarred finger. Deepwood Mott holds, but ravens report a fleet massing at Moat Cailin. Balon's daughter claims independence anew, wants to carve up the riverlands while Lannisters bleed. We cannot defend the seas and the wall both. Nor can we starve, Jon admitted. Manderley grain is months away, and nothing grows in this cold. Davos leaned close, voice low. There may be another path. Word reached me of a fleet sailing north from the narrow sea, black hulls with 3-headed dragon painted red. Rumors speak of a Targaryen queen come at last. Jon's pulse quickened. Tales of Daenerys Stormborn and her dragons had traveled across the world like wildfire gossip, but many dismissed them as sellsword lies. Dragons fly where they will, he murmured. They do not land for want of winter wheat. Perhaps, Davos allowed, but dragons melt ice, and we face rather too much of that. Jon folded the map. Whether Cersei's threats or Dragon Queen's promises, the North must speak in one voice. I will call the bannermen to Winterfell for a council of ice and fire. Man? Ravens burst skyward days later, wings smearing ink across a bleak canvas of snow cloud. Their messages flew to White Harbor, Bear Island, Last Hearth, the Rills, even the reluctant Lady Dustin at Barrowton. Jon's summons asked for envoys or lords themselves to gather before midwinter's sun reached its lowest arc. A scant fortnight away, Winterfell became hive. Carpenters erected extra stables. Washerwomen scrubbed furs until knuckles cracked. Bakers kneaded dough with powdered snow to stretch flour. The courtyard rang with clashing practice blades as wildlings drilled beside Karstark recruits. Friction sparked, but discipline held under the watchful eyes of Sir Godry Faring and Lady Lyanna Mormont, whose voice carried surprisingly far for so small a frame. Meanwhile, Melisandre spent long hours in the crypts, red glow flickering along corridors of dead kings. Some whispered she conversed with bones. Jon confronted her once. She only smiled softly and said the kings of winter had secrets yet untold. If one knew how to listen to stone. The first envoys arrived under banners of gray and green. The Risewells came astride shaggy garrons, bringing salted beef and a letter of apology for past neutrality. Next, House Hornwood's widow lady rode with 24 men, offering her lands as staging ground for patrols. The Umbers arrived in chaotic fashion. 2 separate parties claiming authority. One under Great June's younger brother Huther, another under a bastard cousin called Whooper Umber. Each vowing loyalty but quarreling over ale rations before dawn. Jon mediated disputes with words sharper than steel, grateful for Davos at his side to charm prickly egos, while Tormund's looming presence discouraged arrogance. Still, tension fermented. Rumors of noble frays massing at the Twins, Lannister envoys in White Harbor's harbor, Greyjoy sails glimpsed near Skagos. On the 7th day of assembly, a hush swept Winterfell like sudden nightfall. Across the sky, a shadow passed. Elongated wings beating with slow power. People spilled into the yard, necks craning. Above, a colossal shape glided through ragged clouds. A dragon, black as volcanic glass, with an underbelly glowing faint ember red. A second followed, bronze scales catching thin sunlight. Screams of awe and fear mingled. Guards reached for bows. Jon ordered them lowered. No quarrel could pierce that hide without Valyrian craft. The dragons circled once, then veered east. Moments later, horns blared at Wintertown's edge. A column approached. Unsullied phalanx, spears bristling. Dothraki riders gripping arcs. At center, a woman on a white stallion, silver hair streaming. Daenerys Targaryen. She rode under a banner of red, three-headed dragon breathing sable flame. And the great hall filled to bursting that night. Tables removed, tapestries pulled back. A single brazier's ring formed around the dais, where a long, oaken table waited. Jon stood at the head with Stannis to his right. Returned from Eastwatch grimmer than before, but resolute. And Davos, Lyanna Mormont, Lady Alice, Wyman Manderley, arrived late, puffing from the ride. Tormund Giantsbane and Maester Tybalt. Opposite them stood Daenerys Stormborn, Ser Jorah Mormont, Missandei of Neath, Grey Worm of the Unsullied, and a tall Tyroshi, known as Dario Naharis, dressed in colors brighter than any Northman would brave. Snow drifted through high windows, hissing against fire heat. A hush preceded their first words. Daenerys bowed her head. Lords of the North, I come not as conqueror but as rightful heir to the Seven Kingdoms. Her voice rang strong yet soft, bearing lilts of old Valyria and rough edges hewn in exile. But I heed the true war, not for thrones of iron but for life itself. My dragons have seen the shadows moving in the ice. Men misawa. Jon inclined his head. We share that war, your grace. Yet the North bled under southern crowns. My father died by one, my brother at a banquet of another. If allegiance will be sworn anew, it must be between equals bound by survival, not chains of debt. Daenerys studied him with eyes as cool as the blue in Glacier Heart, yet behind them glowed furnace of purpose. When the long night ends, if we stand victorious, I will call a great assembly of all realms. You will have voice. The North may choose its own fate, kingdom or confederacy, provided we first defeat the army of the dead together. And one. Murmurs rippled among gathered lords. Stannis cleared his throat. Grand promises ask for grand actions. What strength do you bring, aside from winged dread? Ser Jorah stepped forward. Her Grace commands 15,000 unsullied, 12,000 Dothraki screamers, Sellsword companies from Volantis soon to join, and 3 dragons grown full. His gaze swept the hall. But she requires allies to move supplies inland, winter-clad soldiers who know these snows. Lady Lyanna, all of 10 years, spoke with a bear's roar. Bear Island knows snows, yes, but dragons breathe fire hot enough to melt castles. Will they melt our villages by accident? Daenerys responded evenly. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion heed my word. They are no threat to loyal houses. Jon interjected. Dragons melt ice too. The walls' fallen watchtowers could become gates of fire. Stannis' frown deepened. Magic seldom obeys simple plans. Melt the wrong ice and you drown in floods. Ben? Wyman Manderley stroked his double chin. Better drowned than devoured by whites, he muttered. Highborn ears caught. Discussion spiraled. Supply lines, fortifications, training. Wildling integration into ranks. Valyrian steel, distribution. It became clear dragons alone could not patrol every reach. Men would still bleed. But the presence of flighted furnace beasts emboldened hearts. The debate shifted when Sir Auric of the Black Bells, Cersei's envoy, was brought forth. He stood between 2 stark guards, still sporting smug composure. Jon read the Queen's offer aloud. Gasps, curses. Daenerys laughed without mirth. The lioness seeks to trap the wolf in golden chains, she said. If jealousy fuels her, let it starve. Auric addressed her with sardonic bow. Your grace has come far to die in snows. Yet should you kneel? He got no further. Grey Worm's spear butt clanged on stone. Unsullied ranks stiffened. Auric paled but held tongue. Jon raised a hand. Sir Auric shall be held in guest rooms under guard. His queen may glean our answer by which door he returns through, the front gate or the postern with a blindfold. Damn! Ain't murmur of approval. At length, agreements formed. Daenerys would garrison half her unsullied at Eastwatch. The dragons would patrol northern skies, melting ice floes threatening shoreline keeps. Manderley fleet would resupply allies. Glover carpenters would craft scorpion ballista, using designs from Quarth to repel possible white giants. Stannis would commit Baratheon knights to spearhead along the Gift. Tormund would rally free folk to dig fire. Yet there remained whispers of prophecy. Melisandre spoke late, voice carrying despite the hush. The prince that was promised shines before us, she declared, eyes sliding between Daenerys and Jon. Two flames in one shadow. Together they forged dawn. A chill of portent ripple. And days blurred into frostwork schedules. Jon drilled new brigades in Winterfell's yard. Unsullied trained wildlings in shield formations. Dothraki tested Arak against northern longswords, discovering mutual respect and shared taste for battle songs. Shouted loud enough to rattle icicles. In the great library, Samwell Tarly, newly arrived after perilous flight from the Citadel, pored over manuscripts describing dragonglass veins beneath Skagos cliffs. He proposed missions to mine them. Gendry Waters, bastard smith of King's Landing smuggled north by Davos months ago, now forged arrowheads from Skagos ore, his hammer's rhythm echoing through the smithy night and day. Bran ravens arrived with scarce tidings. Beyond the wall, dead spiders large as hounds. Children of the forest glimpsed weaving nets of green fire across weirwood groves. Cold came earlier than memory. Ghost returned with a giant in tow. One, Dar Wun's cousin, Boda the boulder shaper, stooped yet broad as siege tower. He walked into Winterfell's yard carrying a felled pine tree upright, setting it down as though presenting a gift. Cheers rose. Some fear too. Boda proved gentle, carving bore effigies from snow for children until they laughed around his knees. Meanwhile, Daenerys tested the air currents with her dragons. One bright morning, Rhaegal soared above the wall and let a torrent of fire fall upon a distant ridge where white outriders had been reported. The blaze incinerated trees and corpses alike, sending columns of black smoke north. Yet on his return, the dragon's belly dripped pale ichor. Strange crystal shards embedded in scale. Maester Tybalt examined them. Fragments of ice tipped with glowing blue at core, like insect wings turned to frozen glass. Dangerous. Jon and Daenerys walked Godswood paths that evening beneath branches heavy with snow. Pale light from paper lanterns revealed the heart tree's face etched in living bark. Red sap tears seemed to glisten freshly in frigid glow. A spear shattered against Rhaegal's hide. Daenerys said, voice clipped, "If they craft such weapons for my dragons, we may lose our greatest asset before war truly begins." Jon touched cracked bark, feeling the slow pulse of age within. Valyrian steel defeated one walker. Perhaps dragonfire can forge new weapons from its grace. She studied him. You speak as if destiny stitches us together. Perhaps it does. He met her eyes, depth like dawn on glacier pools. But destiny is a thread. We choose whether to pull. Silence settled, woven with breath frost. Then she extended a hand. Let us pull together. He clasped it. In that instant, a gust of wind stirred heart tree leaves, scattering a flurry of scarlet onto snow. The flutter appeared almost to form the outline of a flame-wreathed wolf for one heartbeat before dissolving. Now. Snowstorms swallowed the land for 9 days straight. Blizzards bent timber beams, collapsed small folk cottages. Ravens perished mid-flight, their frozen bodies found in drifts like dark blossoms. Dragons huddled near castle forges, their breath maintained thaw pools where smiths quenched blades. Even unsullied shivered beneath layered cloaks. On the 10th day, clear skies revealed a world transformed. Not a plain but an ocean of white dunes sculpted by gale. Hiding pitfalls and crevasses. Ranging parties dispatched before the storm had not returned. Jon assembled search columns. Boda carried a huge iron bell, ringing at intervals to guide wanderers. Near dusk, horns sounded from the north gate. A group of riders staggered in. Rangers of the Night's Watch, led by Dolorous ADD, bearing a stretcher. Upon it lay a corpse charred beyond recognition, save for a Valyrian steel dagger clutched in blackened fingers. Samwell recognized the blade, the weapon he had taken from a White Walker long ago. The corpse was Ser Denys Mallister, Lord Commander. His body steamed in the frigid air as if still aflame. Ed, gaunt with frostbite, told grim tale. Mallister led patrol to the gorge, lured by false signal fires. Ambush, whites cloaked in human skins. The dead wielded spears tipped with dragon glass fused to frozen meteor stone. Mallister sacrificed himself to allow others escape. Setting his cloak alight with wildfire to burn path through encirclement. He fought like fire demon until ice overwhelmed. Silence ruled the hall as story ended. Then old God's bell tolled once for fallen brother. Jon knelt beside remains, pressing hand to scorched dagger. Images flashed behind eyes, blue flame, screams, a hornless figure standing on black ice raising arm as darkness billowed. When vision passed, he swayed. Daenerys steadied him. "What did you see?" "Night King marches," Jon whispered. "But not alone. A queen walks beside him, formed of shattered ice, eyes of void. She carries half a horn." "Men?" Daenerys frowned. "The horn we broke? Its twin, perhaps," Jon said. "And she is coming for the dragons." And the council reconvened. Melisandre proclaimed an ancient pact broken. The Bride of Night, first forged in dusk of the Dawn Age when a Stark king took a pale woman as wife, now returned to reclaim stolen life. Prophecy named her Nyssa, Nyssa, reborn in sorrow. "Where she treads, flames wane," the Red Woman intoned. Across the table, Samwell paled, recalling pages from an abandoned High Valyrian scroll describing a spirit queen who could weave frost through any living flame. Plans revised. Dragons would no longer fly alone. Ground scouts armed with mirror shields would track for ambush from below. Jon ordered Forge to produce dragonglass-tipped harpoons sized for ballista, to be mounted atop watchtowers and on Boda's custom cart pulled by 6 oxen. Meanwhile, Daenerys approached Tormund with a proposal. Dothraki and free folk would ride east with Rhaegal to scour haunted forest clearings, safe supply routes. Tormund accepted, though with wry grin. "Long as your lizard doesn't bite my hairy backside." Preparations pressed onward until day before midwinter solstice. Snow still fell, but gentle, like hush preceding song. Winterfell's courtyards thrummed with nervous activity. Arrow fletchers dosing shafts in obsidian slurry. Grooms braiding horse manes with prayer ribbons. Children weaving talismans of pine and red string to hang on walls. The mood hovered between festival and funeral. Jon stood by Castle Gate watching a new banner rising. Direwolf entwined with 3-headed dragon. Tongues of flame crossing fangs of frost. A symbol crafted by Daenerys seamstresses overnight at Ghost, urging. He had stolen the cloth and dropped it at their feet. When wind caught it, threads shimmered copper and silver. Stannis approached, cloak swirling. His eyes, always stern, softened a margin. "Symbols matter," he acknowledged gruffly. "I misliked your father for his road of honor, yet perhaps his path was wiser than thrones built on deceit." Jon inclined chin. "Honor alone will not stop the dead either." "No," Stannis said. "But it may hold the living long enough to stand together." He extended a small chest. "Gift, dot." Inside rested a circlet of black steel inlaid with bone chips shaped into a simple direwolf. "Forged from captured Bolton knives. Wear it when the night is darkest." Jon ran a thumb along cold metal. It felt heavy yet sincere. "I will. And you will stand beside me when I do." Stannis nodded once. In that flick of understanding, ancient enmities dimmed. And the night of the solstice arrived with moon shrouded behind thick veils. Winterfell's walls bristled with torches, each flame fed by essence of pine tar mixed with powdered dragonglass dust. Experiment of the alchemists. Fire burned violet at core. Dragons roosted atop, rebuilt first keep. Their breaths shone orange in gloom. The yard below held nearly 20,000 souls. Northmen, wildlings, unsullied, Dothraki, Baratheon knights, Manderly sailors, giants and children, wolves and warhounds. A tapestry of desperate alliance. Jon donned the black steel circlet, cloak clasp pinned by twin shards of the sundered horn. At dais center he faced the assembly. Melisandre lifted a torch, chanting in Old Tongue. The heart tree's face bathed in flickering glow through open doors. Jon spoke. His voice carried across hush, thick as snowfall. He told of the long night's first rising, of heroes unnamed who stood against unending dark. He spoke of Malister's sacrifice, of Hardhome's shatter, of the Bride of Frost coming for flame. He spoke of children unborn depending on their mettle. He finished. We are many banners, yet tonight we fly one, life's banner. Cheers rose, echoing against stone. Some wept, some grim laughed. Tormund bellowed a war chant. Unsullied clacked spear shafts in perfect rhythm. Giants beat drums of stretched mammoth hide. Dragons roared, and their hot breath glanced off clouds to reveal a circle of aurora overhead. Green and violet swirling as if dancing to the rising anthem. In that moment, Jon sensed threads of fate drawing taut. Something vast stirred beyond mortal sight, a tide waiting to break. And aurora faded near dawn when a horn blast cleaved the air. One long, mournful. Silence crashed like a lid. A second blast followed, deeper. Guards atop North Tower cried alarm. Jon and Daenerys raced up spiral. From roof they saw a streak of pale blue light, undulating across far northern horizon. Melisandre joined them, face drawn. It begins, she whispered. The Night King wakes from wound. The third blast never came. Instead, clouds parted revealing the Bride of Night herself, astride a great white stag far beyond the tree line. Tall woman wrought entirely of translucent ice, gown of mirrored shards, crown of frost thorns. In her raised hand gleamed half a horn, mirror to fragments at Jon's breast. When she spoke, her voice rolled like avalanches, not language but texture of despair. At her back, ranks of whites stretched to dark forest, torches of ghostly blue afloat among them. Dragons screamed. Drogon launched, wings smiting air. Rhaegal and Viserion followed, coursing sky as black and green comets. The bride lifted horn half. Pale resonance rippled. Ice-formed spears launched upward, striking. Rhaegal banked. Shards shattered on hide but left lesions of crystal slowly spreading. Drogon roared fire. Swirling inferno collided with invisible shield of cold, exploding into storm of steam and snowflakes. The Night King strode into view beside Bride, raising a hand of cracked ice. Together they pressed forward. Winterfell's defenders surged to walls. Ballista loosed harpoons trailing flaming chains. Giants heaved boulders coated in pitch. Free folk archers released volleys of dragonglass. Yet for each white felled, two pressed behind. Jon donned helm, descended to courtyard, met Deva Stannis Grey Worm. Hold walls, he ordered. I take the horn shards to the Godswood. Maybe Union can answer hers. Daenerys landed atop broken rampart on Drogon's back. She leapt down, face ruddy from wind and heat. We do this together, she said. They sprinted through corridors to the Godswood. Snow swirled inside despite high walls. Unnatural spiral drawn toward Hearttree like vortex. At base, roots gaped forming a maw. Melisandre knelt before it, gemstone blazing. Ghosts stood guard. Hackles raised. White fur haloed by ruby glow. Place shards, the priestess commanded. Jon laid them upon root altar. Daenerys placed scaled gauntlet over his. Warmth flared as two halves pulsed. Inside root cavity, an answering glow lit. A third shard embedded since ages unknown. Together they drew it out. It slipped free with sound like chime. Alive with heat and cold simultaneously, the three pieces merged in their hands, reforming curved horn whole once more. Yet different, bands of dragon glass encircled it, runes molten bright. Melisandre chanted. Azor et vagar. Se leo aheshk. Horn vibrated. Air shrieked. Jon thought of Mallister's sacrifice, of Bran's laughter behind Ice Door. He poured memory of love and pain into the resonance. Daenerys closed her eyes, recalling slave chains broken, dragons hatched from stone, flames wreathed horn, icy mist twined around flame, neither devouring. They blew. Sound erupted. Neither brassy nor woodwind but choir of dawn chorus amplified by thunderclap. Walls trembled. Snow vaporized in a ring outward from Hearttree, revealing earth throbbing red. Beyond ramparts, undead halted as if cords jerked them. Night King turned toward Godswood, eyes narrowing. Bride of Night's crown cracked. Blue fires flickered. Dragonglass arrows ignited spontaneously, blazing white as starfire. Atop walls archers drew in awe. When they loosed, shafts streaked like meteors, piercing whites and bursting them into showers of light. Giants roared triumph, hurling fire-soaked stones now aflame with unnatural brilliance. Dragons renewed assault. Drogon's breath burned hotter, golden white flame that cut through frost shield like paper. It wrapped around the Night King. He raised arms but ice armor boiled away, leaving silhouette of stark bone before shattering. Bride screamed, shards of her gown cascaded. Jon and Daenerys emerged from Godswood, horns still glowing faint. The Night King staggered on charred snow, crown melting down visage. Bride scraped forward, half liquefied. Jon strode within reach. Longclaw met frost staff. Valyrian blade hummed with horn's echo, now bright as dawn flame. It cleaved the staff, then torso. Bride exploded in swirl of ice dust swirling upward into sky before scattering. The Night King alone now, extended hand as if pleading, but within eyes burned hatred centuries deep. Daenerys lifted dagger forged from horn residue, plunged into his chest. Crack thundered. Ice monarch fissured, then burst into a million snow crystals glowing azure, rising, then vanishing as though sucked into void. In the distance, the white host collapsed en masse. Strings cut. Silence swept field, broken only by hissing snow where embers cooled. And now, dawn's first rays spilled over Winterfell, revealing yards strewn with still corpses, now just men, long dead. Survivors cheered, sobbed, embraced. Giants bellowed triumph. Unsullied raised broken spears in silent salute. Dragons circled above, screeching exultant cries. Frost on their scales melted, dripping like tears of obsidian water. Jon stood on rampart, circlet gleaming, horn dormant at his belt, now cool. Daenerys joined, cloak billowing crimson. They exchanged glance not of victory, but of relief tempered by grief. Lives lost could not be sung back. Tormund limped up, hair singed. Well, Lord Crow, seems we pulled that thread. Almost unraveled the world, but stitched a new cloak instead. Jon managed smile. One warm enough for both north and south, he said. Stannis approached, frost in beard melted into rivulets. The true enemy lies beaten. He allowed, gaze hard but lighter. Kingdoms may now decide their fate with living tongues, not silent starved bones. As survivors gathered, Jon raised horn fragment high. The song of ice and fire ends where a new one begins, in unity. He planted Longclaw into snow beside him, blade flickering dawnfire at edges. Around it, people of all banners pressed palms to the blade, hands countless. The heat of humanity melted raven-black snow into water that steamed faintly, rising like hope. Above, the first sunrise after solstice cast golden road across white landscape that no longer vibrated with death, but with the promise of spring sleeping beneath frost, waiting like all souls for the moment to be born again. And though songs would later claim a single hero felled the Night King, those who breathed that dawn knew truth. It was many hearts, many fires, one horn, one purpose. Life enduring,